Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the A-Leagues, Premier Leagues and more. This week on the show, twists and turns aplenty as the title and relegation battles reach their conclusion on a very worthy Prem final day. We review the new teen movie, Euro Trip 2, Ellie and Aiden's Adventure, and VUC fans show up and VUC players don't as the Woo and City are through to the A-League Grand Final. My name's Tommie C, and joining me this week, we've got Colby and Jesse. How you doing, boys? A bit flat today after, I guess, not necessarily the result you're after, but also possibly a late night as well. Jesse?
Yeah, you're definitely for me. I did a split shift again this week, and the body's definitely a bit tired tonight. So thanks for the early pod time, boys.
Yeah, we don't bounce back like we used to do anymore, do we? And Colby, how are you this fine Monday evening?
Yeah, a bit flat as well, Tommie, after Liverpool failed to cinch it. But, I mean, they did their job. So, what were we expecting, really? Like, there's the City juggernaut under Pep are a little bit hard to stop at the moment, but more on that later.
Yeah, indeed. More on that shortly. All right, boys, let's hook into our respective moments of the week then. Jesse, you want to go first?
Yeah, a bit of a shout out to friend of the pod, Tommie, who's watching this while he's eating some KFC. Big Leeds fan. And my moment of the week My moment of the week is Leeds staying up against seemingly all the odds. The narrative all week was Ivan Toney finding a tweet from about 2 or 3 years back where Stuart Dallas and that was singing about Brentford going down or something, or there was bad blood between Brentford and Leeds. So the narrative all week was that Brentford were going to spoil the party for them and knock them out and make them basically go down out of the league. And Leeds really dug in with their I think the motto was believe that they use. So the Ted Lasso Leeds. And they did a great job at digging that one out of the fire. And to be honest, I didn't see that coming because, I mean, they were getting red cards left, right, and centre all the way up in the lead up to that game. So good on them. And, if I had a beer, I'd raise a beer to them.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild final day. And I know that Leeds, a lot of Australians have a soft spot for Leeds. So, and you compare that with Burnley, who I'm not sure a lot of people have a soft spot for Burnley. So, like I said, more on the Premier League relegation battle in a second, though. Colby, what about you, mate? What was your moment of the week?
My moment of the week, I'll give it to Aiden Rustic, Tommie, and Eintracht Frankfurt winning the Europa League. He actually played.
Damo's anti-boy.
So your Damo's anti-boy, Tommie, your boy. I'm partial to him as well. Although I did give the Ruse social media a spray when they were gassing him up and he was an unused sub off the bench in one of the previous ties. But he actually got off the bench and he scored his pen, so he did his job and collected his medal and got a trophy as well. So
that's underrated, I think, about the idea of rocking up to a penalty shootout in a final of a tournament and sticking your penalty. Because I mean, there'd be a lot of people that would fold in that really high pressure situation like that, and like he's not super experienced or by any means. So the fact that he stuck his penalty, I think, is pretty big. For me, look, it probably would have been Aiden Rustic as well. But look, I'm going to go for the other half of the Euro Trip pun that I made in the title, and it's Ellie Carpenter winning the Champions League with Lyon, which was a great result for Ellie. She was an unused substitute last year when Lyon won the Champions League last year, and obviously Lyon are just a juggernaut of European football in the women's game. So it's not particularly surprising that they've won it, but this year they were playing a Barcelona team that just have just conquered everything ahead of them, and sort of they were the two most dominant teams in Europe. So pretty massive that Ellie Carpenter got the winner's medal there. But I guess it wasn't all good news with Ellie Carpenter looking like she's got a pretty serious injury as well. Some kind of amusing scenes at the end of the game, though, when she hobbled onto the field at full pace, sort of on crutches, and crutches sort of flailing around as well. So, look, hopefully that's not going to impact on her next next season, and heading into the World Cup year next year for the Tillies. So fingers crossed for Ellie. But for now, just congratulations, I guess, for her and for Aid. Boys, into own goals though. Jesse, what about you, mate?
I think just the steady increase of pitch invasions, unsolicited pitch invasions. It's getting a bit out of hand, and I grew up in, as we all did, in an era where this actually happened quite a lot. But we also, were fortunate to grow up in a time where there was probably less attacks, public attacks, and things like that. And it's
the
just
pre-terrorism age almost.
Well, at least in our world. And so it's just it's one of those things which I was thinking about this today, like you get on an airplane and you go somewhere and there's intense customs and your bag's searched about 3 times and you've got x-rays and you're checking to see every item that's in your luggage. And that's because they deem an airport and a plane as a big area of a mass of people. Well, a football game is also a mass of people. And the fact that, people can get in the grounds you just don't know what they've brought in with them. It's just a bit worrying that people are able to that easily access the pitch, obviously with very little resistance. And also with so many people doing it, it's so hard to police, find people. There's no punishment. So people kind of feel that confidence en masse. And it's starting to get a bit worrying, I think, because I guess the reason why I brought this up as my own goal is that I completely get the emotion, and if it was as straightforward as it's perfectly safe, let's just all do it, then I'd probably be fine about it. But the fact is that the matter, you see Vieira having to sort of swap fans away because people are getting in his face. I mean, that's not cool.
Yeah, mate, this was something that I was tempted to make my own goal, but instead there's a bit to this, right? So we've all seen a few pitch invasions. Obviously, there was a couple in the Everton game against Palace midweek, but there's been a couple in the Football League playoffs. So in the League 2 playoffs, there was a pitch invasion in both the semis. Championship playoff semi between Forest and Sheffield United, there was a pitch invasion where Billy Sharp there was this dude who just basically did a flying headbutt at him. There was one in the Europa League semi between Frankfurt and West Ham, and then obviously last night with Manchester City winning against Villa, there was one there as well. And at least, I guess to their credit, City's security looked like they were a little bit better prepared than some of the other games where it had happened, and sort of players were very quickly moved off the field. But you mentioned the incident involving Patrick Vieira, and I mean the FA, they said that they're going to be investigating that, and it's not exactly clear whether or not sort of Vieira's sort of free from blame, whether or not they could sort of haul him over the coals, right? And I mean, you've got this guy basically coming up and screaming in your face abuse and all sorts of different things, and I think Patrick Vieira's reaction is pretty understandable, I think, given the circumstances, and that's sort of before you get into the scenarios that we saw with Billy Sharp, where he was headbutted. And as it turns out, Jesse, you mentioned about sort of punishments and that people have confidence when they get onto the pitch in these big numbers. The bloke who headbutted Billy Sharp, he's been given 6 months jail. He's given a fine, very small fine, but still was given a fine as part of his punishment as well. So I think what we're seeing is that this is only just sort of developing the FA and certain clubs' responses in response to this, but it does seem like it's kind of ridiculously caught everyone off guard. But just to make one final point, I think you mentioned before about how everyone sort of wants to embrace the passion of supporters and things like that, but I think with this, there's not a grey area to me. I think you've got a situation where you've got thousands of people running onto the pitch, and I think, as we've seen with Billy Sharp and Patrick Vieira, there's no grey area when it comes to people's safety and the players and the playing staff's safety. So for me, this is I'm amazed that like there's even an argument about whether or not this can happen or whether or not it should happen or anything, because it's a recipe for disaster, even more so than what it's been so far. And Rant.
And Tommie, what you do get with that though is in Australia, like, we sit over here and we watch all this stuff happening in Europe, and then you get the overreaction and the over policing in the game here in Australia. And I know we've all seen footage of that teenager who was getting dragged off by like 5 cops at the City game on the weekend, and this is just. Sadly, this is just not an uncommon occurrence in the A-League and in football in Australia. Like police just overreacting to, I don't know, it's not clear what happened exactly. I think there was a goal celebration and the guys come off the edge of the hoardings and jumped onto the pitch or been pushed onto the pitch or something like that. And it's resulted in a bunch of cops ending up there and ejecting him from the venue, and in a pretty forceful looking way by the looks of the video. But it's just the own goal that keeps on giving, isn't it? Like, you're absolutely right. And the pitch invasions and people's safety is really paramount. But then when that gets taken to the other extreme here in the over policing that it results in, it's just not great for the game, particularly when we're already struggling, to try and nurture back some of that active support and the rest of the crowds that come along with it here in Australia.
Yeah, like we haven't really seen like any sort of culture of pitch invasions in football in Australia. Maybe it's because of the size of the crowds. I'm not sure, but I guess it would have been very interesting to have seen if the VUC had have won their game against Western United on Saturday night. If there had been some sort of scenes like that. I did hear I think it was sort of sarcastically that I heard some Victory fans online say that they were going to do a pitch invasion if Wellington, I think it was, beat City in that last game of the season. But obviously we'll never know. But still, it's I guess I could have made that an own goal as well when we were talking about the incident at the City game, where that I think he was only like a 15-year-old as well, where he was basically sort of dragged away by the cops after allegedly he fell over the advertising hoarding. So just really, really challenging time, I guess, for the A-League in dealing with that. And you had Scott Jamieson and Stephen Moore both come out and say, like, this is garbage, like you need to support the fans. And I guess that's the other side of a coin, though. Anyway, Colby, what about you? What was your own goal this week?
Well, that has to be it for me, Tommie. This kid getting dragged and yet another incident at A-League grounds. And, why haven't we dealt with this by now? Like we've had all of these forums between various iterations of the APL, the FFA, as they then were having dialogues with police and, talking about they were going to get supporter marshals to be an interface between the police and the crowds, the active support at the grounds and things like that. And clearly none of that's happening. These incidents just keep on happening. They're just, I mean, they just stuff like that can't be allowed to happen. I mean, maybe there's another side to this particular incident that we're not aware of yet, but there's been a lot of people tweeting about this who seem to be there at the time, and I'm not seeing anything crazy coming out to sort of suggest that this wasn't just another one of those incidents.
Curiously, there was some reports that there were marshals, like city marshals, just outside that area, and they helped in that person getting sort of arrested or dragged out by the police. Which a lot of the city fans were saying that, well, they're not particularly helpful. They're not really looking after the sort of the fans' interest there, and they sort of helped escalate the situation. So obviously, you got to have the right people as
just classic middle management, isn't it? Just fucking escalating the situation.
Oh, exactly. All right, I'm not going to have an own goal because I think we've already talked about the pitch invasions almost to death. But one thing I do want to mention at the top, and that's about the Azusa Ute mini Ute, which has made an appearance in the last couple of weeks, because it's become almost a little bit of like a cult hero in the last week or so. And I don't know why they only just brought this in for the final series. It feels like they should have brought this in round one. because it's just been like strangely fun, just seeing like this little ute drive around. And at yesterday's game, I noticed that there was actually two. I was like, oh my god, there's multiples of them, and I couldn't understand why this was making me so happy, but it was.
Sounds like this should have been your moment of the week, Tommie. You're in the wrong segment.
I just wanted to end on a positive.
You can't just have one Tommie; it will get lonely. You've got to give it a friend.
And you can't have Christmas all year round. I think they did well saving it for the final series. Look how happy you are.
Exactly right. Alrighty, a few bits of news and discussion, though, before we get into the A-League. First of all, we were going to talk about pitch invasions, but I think we've already talked about that. Next up, though, is PSG. They've announced that Kylian Mbappe, he signed a new contract in the last couple of days. 3-year contract, 150 million euro signing on fee, which is basically a whole nother transfer fee that they've paid all over again. He's got a salary of something in the region of like $200,000 a day. Curiously, they've basically given him the power to choose the sporting director and or manager in something I would probably consider to be unprecedented. Correct me if I'm wrong there, fellas, but just a wild scenario that they've now set up for Mbappe at PSG.
Well, Tommie, you've just shown your hand for not listening to last week's pod.
Where
Jesse and I were discussing the Lionel Messi purported or reported stake that he's going to be getting into Miami. And we had a little bit of a chat about this last week on the pod. So we'll just leave that out there. But it's a really interesting I guess juncture that we're at in the game, where we're seeing this big shift in player power while they're still playing. I guess that is the natural endpoint to where, like these transfer fees and wages and sign-on bonuses and all these things, surely they can't keep rising forever.
Reminds me a bit of the NBA a little bit,
yeah.
like a LeBron James or something, like that kind of the power one player has on the team, all the transfers, everybody comes in and out. It only works when you build the team around that player, right? And that's what they wanted to do. I actually almost said this as my own goal, Tommie, the Mbappe situation, because it's just like an absolute train wreck. Like, I think everyone just expected him to go to Real Madrid. It just went on and on and on, and he'd like seemingly had this final meeting where he's going to make a decision, but everyone was just like, okay, the decision is he's going to go to Real Madrid. And then he just completely does a U-turn, but then you see all the terms and conditions of the contract and all the sweetenings of the deal and how
good on them. They absolutely pushed the boat out for him.
Yeah, but like they've basically sold him like a percentage of their business just to keep him, which is just like it's the
thing is they didn't though. Like I actually, like, the more and more I think about it, it's crazy either way you cut it. But like the difference between this and the Messi example is they're going to give Messi like a third ownership of the entire franchise. Like here, yes, he's got like power to veto things and to choose, but presumably this is just while he's a player and for the term of his contract and like
just for 3 years,
and then it's finite, right? Like, whereas the Messi thing, like, yeah, he's just gonna own this club after, so, well, not own it, but he's gonna have a majority shareholding in it. So they're a little bit different, but I mean, whichever way you cut it, I can just hear the writers at The Athletic just writing a think piece on the player power shift that takes you 4 hours on a weekend to read.
Behind a paywall.
Yeah.
It's not behind a paywall if you're a subscriber. Just going to throw that out there.
What?
Boys, one thing that I'm not sure if you guys caught was that La Liga basically were threatening legal action, that they would take it. I'm not sure if they were going to take it against Mbappe or PSG.
They're threatening La legal action.
Yeah, it's good.
And this was just like the saltiest of all salty responses that I've ever seen to something before, right? I don't know how they could like threaten any sort of action, but basically it amounted to that they were saying it was unfair because PSG were spending all this money and Real Madrid couldn't spend that much money, and it just seemed like I said, this just the saltiest of all salty responses to something where they're just so used to getting their own way in Real Madrid, and all of a sudden they can't, and they're like, "No, you can't do that. That's what I do." Oh dear. But anyway, or anything else you guys want to mention about it, the Mbappe deal?
No, just it was a surprise from my perspective.
All right, so on Wednesday night, we've got the A-League All-Stars. They're going to be playing Barcelona in Sydney. The A-League All-Star squad has obviously been announced in the last couple of days. And
alas.
Or probably everyone has already caught that. But the Barcelona squad that was announced today, most of the Barcelona players that you would sort of hope would be coming out are coming out, minus Pedri and Ferran Torres. They're probably the two obvious omissions. Pedri basically because he's just due a break after just being flogged nonstop for the last 2 years with the Olympics and just being played nonstop and so forth. And then Ferran Torres isn't coming because he's not vaccinated and can't get into the country. So boys, are you guys going to watch this game?
When is it?
Wednesday night, 8 p.m.
Yeah, I might flick it on.
Jesse?
I'm not particularly.
No, that's a no.
You couldn't give less fucks.
I'm not particularly enthused about this, but I mean, hey, there will be people out there that are. So all power to you.
Look, to be honest, I was not particularly interested in this, but then as soon as they announced like the Barcelona squad, and then they announced the kit this afternoon as well, I was like, "Ooh, starting to get a little excited for this." Boys, the kit was announced this afternoon by Ultra. It's basically a white Puma template with gold accents. Looks very similar to a Real Madrid kit, I've got to say, as one of you guys pointed out in the chat before we started.
Correction, it looks like a PSG away kit that was custom tailor-made to look like a Real Madrid kit to keep Mbappe happy.
And I tell you what, I would not be surprised if they use this next year as the PSG kit, right? And they just change the A-League All-Stars and put a PSG logo on there. Because I
wouldn't be surprised if Sydney FC get a cut of this too, Tommie, and just sub out the badge. That's the away kit right there.
A part of me really likes the kit, but a part of me knows that I shouldn't like it because, like we just said, it's very obviously playing off sort of Real Madrid and PSG sort of like themes in the kit. So yeah, I feel a little bit guilty for liking it, or even for getting a little bit excited about this whole sort of schmozzle in general.
You can like football in whatever way you like, Tommie, whether it's the All-Stars, whether it's the Lego Brick League. You just like what you like, mate. Don't let any of those purists on soccer Twitter tell you what you can like.
Good. Boys, Thrill House FC asks, who's getting Cap the Cum Dog tattoo?
Damo, surely.
out of the three of us, who's getting one?
Well, I mean, I just don't really know where you'd put it.
Bum cheek, surely. That's a bum cheek tattoo. Come on.
Yeah.
Colby, do you have any tattoos?
No. I don't think I would start with a Jason Cummings.
To be fair, pretty sure both of you guys are blank canvases, so
we are.
Well, Jesse, I think Jesse then, for that reason.
Jesse, you're right. Colby and I are both Kalinskians, so Jesse, you're looking like you're the hot favorite to get the Cap the Cum Dog.
This is a massive stitch up because what I was insinuating was that you were a blank canvas and we're ready to be drawn on, but looks like it's backfired on me.
I think this is the first listener question that we've actually answered ever in the history of the show. There you go, Thrill House. Thank you for that.
Oh dear. And finally, before we get into A-League matches, a little bit of A-League news. Obviously, with certain clubs not making finals, they're starting to announce who they're going to be keeping and releasing for next season. Sydney, they've announced that they will be releasing 12 players, including Kostas Barbarouses, Trent Buhagiar, Luciano Narsing, Callum Talbot, and Bobo. He's obviously retiring as well, amongst others. They announced that they were going to be keeping a hold of Steve Corica and Luke Bratton. They've both resigned for next season. The Wanderers, they announced that they will be releasing 6 players, including Bernie Abidi, Petratos, Toma Hamed, Ziggy Gordon, Mayas. And also there's a bit of a coaching clear out there with Gary Van Egmond leaving and Labano Haliti also moving into an academy role. The Knicks announced that Josh Sotirio, Hael Sandoval and Gary Hooper and a couple others would be leaving, whilst the Raw also announced that our collective boy, Parsons would be leaving Brisbane as well. Boys, I dropped a lot of names there, but is there any of those that you are particularly surprised about? Colby?
We'll start with the Sydney ones, Tommie. I thought Barbarousis and Bahaja and Callum Talbot as well. It was surprising to see that they were released. I mean, with a lot of these press releases about player departures, what I will say, just to preface all of this, is that I don't know the circumstances around any of why they were leaving. So I don't know whether they were cut by the club. I don't know whether the player was pushing for a move and it's the old A-League mutual, or whether the contract was simply expiring and they weren't renewed. So with that all said, I find it difficult to believe that if the likes of Barbarousis, Bahaja and Talbot all wanted to play for Sydney next season, that they would be moved on. But there is a big rebuild and clearly they're backing Corica to do that. And also, like, just while we're on that, looking at you, Sydney FC, using the word signs instead of like renews or extends contract in your posts, very confusing, especially with Corica saying he's re-signed after the shocking season he had. I had to do a triple take because I'm like, he's resigned. Yes, he's gone.
How good is resign conflation?
Yeah.
Oh, mate. We were discussing during the week about how every time, or about once every 2 weeks, I have to check which one's which, and it just does my head in as well.
Boys, if you had to put all these sign-ins on a ship, it's going to clog up the Suez Canal, because there's a fair amount of them here, and it's sort of like, where did these people all go? And are they going to go A-League, or are they going to go somewhere else? I mean, it doesn't look likely. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last week as well, Colby. I mean, RIP episode 172. But we talked a little bit about this as well, where we thought, there are a lot of names, outgoing names, which don't particularly look like they belong at another A-League club.
Well, you look at a lot of these names, and they're either going to end up at the Central Coast or MacArthur next year, or they're going to end up in the Middle East.
Pretty much.
In summary.
I'm not ready to talk about Parsons yet, because I think he's going to end up at a Melbourne club and he's going to dominate next season.
Mate, that was why I threw to you first, because I wanted to hear your thoughts on Parsons leaving.
You're
just not ready yet.
I'm not ready yet. You're going to have to wait till the end of season A-League season review, and I'll have time to process a little bit. It's still a bit raw. It's a bit raw at the moment.
Jesse, is it still a little bit raw that Joshua Sotirio is going to be leaving the Knicks?
Joshua.
It's
Joshua. I mean, who's going to be that outlet for us now?
Well, I caught this just before I got on the pod, and I'm not sure if you said it in the group chat that a little bit of breaking rumor here that it looks like Trent Bahaja, he could be headed towards the Knicks, so he could be that outlet next year for the Knicks.
Bahaja and the Wayne train, what a combo!
Just trying to think about what the combo would be called. Come back to me on that.
The Boo train. Boo Wayne? No. Boo Earns?
Boo Wayne.
All right, let's finally get into the A-League semi-finals, though. So this weekend saw the conclusion of the two-legged A-League semi-finals. Boys, before we get into the actual matches, though, what have you been liking better? The mini utes that have been doing the rounds, or the two-legged semi-finals?
Two-legged semis are a great idea, honestly. I mean, I don't know about how you do it with the midweek fixtures. I don't know whether they'll change that, or whether there's a scheduling alternative, maybe back-to-back weekends. I don't know, but in theory, great idea. the idea of introducing home and away fixtures and all the drama that comes with that, great idea, especially as clubs slowly transition towards owning their own stadiums, or at least playing out of the one consistent location. Looking at you, Raw, Perth, Knicks. I mean, not your fault, Perth and the Knicks, but the Raw. Come on, guys. Even Sydney. Come on. Like once we get some consistency and a bit of a rhythm going at grounds, I think that'll be great.
I think maybe one of the only bad things about the two-legged semi-finals this year was that the Woo and Melbourne Victory both played their two games out of the same stadium. So it meant that they're and I mean we all know the issues with the Woo and their stadium build, but that was probably the only downside, I guess. Maybe the other small downside was that the first legs of both games were a little bit cagey, but we'll get to that, I guess, in a second. So look, let's talk Woo versus Melbourne Victory. So first up, they played Tuesday night. The Woo hosting Victory in the first leg of their game at Amy Park. As I said before, this was quite a cagey match, especially when you compare it to the return leg. With both the VUC and the Woo keen to keep things tight. The VUC had probably the better chances, though, and took a 1-0 lead for the return leg after Jake Brimmer scored a delicious half volley from just outside the box. The Woo felt they had a pretty good shout for a penalty, but it wasn't given. The 1-0 scoreline meant that the game was perfectly poised for the return leg at the same venue, but hosted by Melbourne Victory. Boys, anything you wanted to throw about that game, or should we move straight on to the return leg?
No, let's go to the return leg. I mean, it was just that Jake Brimmer moment of brilliance that really separated the teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, moving on to the return leg, Melbourne Victory, obviously home. This time they had a bigger crowd supporting them. And it was obviously also on a Saturday afternoon, 5 o'clock kickoff. Raucous home crowd showed up to watch the Victory host the Woo. Boys, do you actually think the crowd might have worked against Victory, though, in this one?
Whether it did or it didn't, it was just such a great moment to see the Victory fans there and bringing out the banner, back where we belong. They've gone off early on the we're back, baby, the semi-finals, only to crash out to not their rival, Western United, coached by, thank God he's not our manager, except in meme announcements, John Aloisi, who'll be facing, okay, they are our rivals, but CFG is a cancer on football and they have no fans. Melbourne City, just, chef's kiss. You could not write this. Love to see it.
Look, you've done a great job of summarising it there, Colby, because look, I think me and a lot of people were predicting that Melbourne Victory were probably the favourites heading into the final series, and for them to sort of collapse at the key moment, sort of as they were looking like they were going to run away with the tie, was just I guess was really disappointing from one perspective, but also from another perspective, it was just also amazing to see. This game really had it all because you had comebacks and then you also had, like I said, you had a Victory team who basically kind of collapsed in the end. And I mean, who would have thought that Lockie Wales would be the one who would sort of be running away and scoring the goal that would basically decide the match for
not
the
me. Not me.
Oh dear, but boys, how crucial did you think the two penalty shouts were across the two games? Because there was one where there was I think it was Prijovic. There was a pretty decent shout against him for a handball in the Woo penalty area, and that could have, I guess, changed the game. What was your feel on the timing of the two penalty incidences across the two games?
I was thinking about this, Tommie, and I actually think there were 3 penalty incidences. There was that other one on Miranda in the second game inside of the box when someone's clipped him on the way through. And I actually thought that was more of a pen than both of those. And so I guess the push on Wales, the more and more I see that one, the more and more I think they arrived at the right decision. And I don't know if that was necessarily a pen. The handball, seen those given. And I suppose if you put those two decisions together, then I reckon, victory would have been away. They've got 2 goals. But, those calls go for you and they go against you. And so as it was, the Woo outplayed them, I think, in both legs. Yeah, Victory had some good chances in the first leg, but that Brimmer goal was, I'm pretty sure, their only shot on target in the whole game. And it was that moment of brilliance that separated them. And then you had a brilliant free kick from Brimmer in the second leg, which kept the scoreline a bit respectable. But I think, calls come and go, but the Woo deserve the win.
I think for me, what's interesting about a bit of a trend we're seeing with Aloisi's game plan is it's basically like when you play a game of online FIFA and you go all out attacking too early, Cobbs, and you get to the final part of the game, and all your players are on red energy bars, and you can't run, you can't sprint, you've got no energy left, and your opposition just absolutely destroys you because you're just you're like road cones. And I think what the Woo do really well is he's basically, what it appears to me when I watch them, that they're just constantly not playing within themselves, but conserving energy throughout the game and only using it in the times where they feel like it's worth it. So it's a counter attack or it's a period where they feel like they're on top. And then they'll have periods where they let the other team have the ball and sit back and just basically let them sort of cross the ball in the box and just deal with it as it comes. What it means is in that final period of the game where it's so critical, they seem to find this little extra bit of energy, and it worked for them in this game, and they really pulled away at the vital moments and got those got the late goals. So I think it'd be interesting to see if that's a trend, and that's something I've picked up on personally, and I think I noticed it when they played the Knicks. And,
well, it certainly is a trend, and it's that counter-attacking transition style of football that John Aloisi's got them playing. And I have to say, I'm in big trouble in Check the Tape segment because I went hard on John Aloisi in our season preview. So, but unbelievable. And I don't know if enough people are talking about this. If they're not, they certainly will be when everyone starts to reflect back on the season. Because if you think about John Aloisi at the Raw, which I do often, he was somebody who Raw fans will tell you just didn't have a style of play. I watched him manage the Raw for 3 seasons or 4 seasons or whatever it was, and I couldn't tell you what his style of play was there. Now we're sitting here and we can easily say, well, this is what he's trying to do. This is his style of play. And look at the results it's getting. And then you got to talk about the signings that he's brought in. Prijovic, Young, Lacroix. The guy is just smashing it on every front. And I'll put my hand up and say I was wrong.
Boys, I challenge you to, work in Optus Sport for 3 or 4 years, move buttons around, circle things, press play, then rewind.
It'll change you.
It'll change you, man. You're not going to come out of there without a game plan. That's all I'm saying.
It's like Colby said, there's been a lot of people that I think are going to be eating some humble pie, regardless of whether or not the Woo win the grand final or not. Yep, and me too. I'm pretty sure.
Not me.
Boys, in the other semi-final, though, you had Adelaide and Melbourne City. They travelled to Adelaide first in what was really a match for the purists only, a game that was pretty low on entertainment, big on arm wrestle vibes, as 2 teams played out a 0-0 draw in Adelaide. A few spicy moments where there were a few sort of flare-ups between some players, but that was pretty much it as far as the highlights go. But in the return leg, with obviously the first leg being 0-0, it meant it was set up really nicely for the return leg. It basically meant Adelaide and Melbourne City both had one objective, basically win the game and you go through to the grand final. So Melbourne City, they looked like they had a pretty ordinary start to the game, I've got to say. Adelaide, they took the lead, but it was really, I guess, a game of 2 halves, and not first 45 and second 45. It was more akin to the first 60 minutes, followed by then the final 30 minutes plus extra time. And Adelaide, I thought, did really well in that first sort of quarter of the game, or first half of the game, I should say. But I tell you what, City came home with a soaking wet sail in the final 60 minutes of the match.
Don't let that sopping wet sail distract you from Adelaide scoring a wonder goal. I mean, put some respect on that goal.
We need a cloth to wipe up that wet sail.
Yeah. We don't. I guess we know now why it was so wet. Jesse. So look, great goal scored by I think it's Clough. Is that how you say it? But yeah, obviously great goal from him. It was scored right in front of me as well at Amy. And I tell you what, I was just sitting there going, how the hell has that gone in? And I know that Glover has not been a particularly popular goalkeeper for City fans this season, but it wasn't much that he could have done about that. That was a cracking goal.
He had a good game too, Tommie. Other than, not much he could do about that, but he made some good saves that game.
He did. He looked far more solid than he had in previous weeks or even months. But the game changed quite dramatically with about half an hour to go. Boys, what did you think was the big changing moment for the game, though?
Well, hard to go past the introduction of the slidey boy, Tilio, coming on, scoring that goal. Also great little goal, changing the game. I thought that was really the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that, Colby. Not only did his introduction, obviously he was a lot fresher and just in better form than Berenguer was, but they dramatically changed, I guess, the speed in which they were going forward. They were far more direct, and Berenguer, he likes to get on the ball, and he's sort of that cultured playmaker. But Tilio was far more direct, and they were just getting the ball forward to McLaren far quicker, and it meant that they were just far more dangerous and created probably half a dozen chances in that final 30 minutes. And it looked like they were on track to win the game in normal time, but alas, they couldn't find a winner. But it was 2 minutes into extra time when Jamie McLaren pops up, and pretty much everyone was in unison agreeing that was the most Jamie McLaren goal that he's ever scored.
Quintessential.
Yeah, exactly. But look, that was the way that it stayed, 2-1 with McLaren getting the winner in extra time. Adelaide, they looked like they'd run their race pretty much by the 60-minute mark and didn't really offer a lot in extra time. So they'd probably be a little bit disappointed that the game sort of petered out the way it did. But still, I guess Adelaide, I know, would be pretty proud of the way that they even managed to make it within sort of half an hour of making the grand final. So I'm sure that Adelaide fans would be pretty happy with that performance and the way that their season's gone.
And when you said, alas, they couldn't find a winner, I mean, are you fast forwarding to Wednesday night's game?
Just trying to shoehorn that in, right? But boys, we've got the A-League Grand Final coming up this Saturday. Of course, it's going to be at Amy Park. Melbourne City playing Western United in the game that really... I'm pretty sure Danny Townsend is having kittens that these are the two teams they're going to be playing. Is anyone going to be watching this?
The best two teams in Melbourne, Tommie, a Melbourne derby for the grand final. It's what we said we all wanted, and it's what we got. Of course, we'll be watching, but what's it going to cost you to go and watch a game down there?
It's surprisingly expensive. So what is it? A Cat B ticket is $75, I think, which surprised me a little bit. Even at the cheap seats they're still I think $50 or $60, which surprised me a little bit. But I think we had this discussion last year about grand final ticket prices, and I mean it's also a premium fixture, right? Like they're not. They're expecting this to sell out, or at least go close to selling out, even if it is Melbourne City and Western United, right? Because a lot of people will just kind of come out of the woodwork for a game like this. So I think a lot of people wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't sell out, but still, it's likely that I think this will still get probably 20,000 people to it, and I think it will still have a good atmosphere.
Are they billing it as
the bare minimum?
Are they billing it as the unstoppable force meets the immovable object?
They'd have to, because that is the perfect analogy for these two teams.
It really is.
Melbourne derby, Civil War. Sorry, that was just a Marvel reference. That's a Marvel reference. Run them memes. Run them memes. Will just add us, mate. That's for you. That's for you.
Marvel references will always be welcome in the A-League.
Boys, what's your key matchup in this game?
Well, I mean, for me, if the A-League Van Dijk has a good game, then the Wu have a good game, and I think he's Lacroix. I think he's going to be key. He's just going to be mopping up all those balls into the box. And a game that comes to mind is earlier in the season that we all went to, Tommie, was when I think it was Windsor Hall scored in the first half, and basically we just parked the bus for the rest of the game, which is what they've done a lot this season. But I distinctly remember that game because I was sitting next to you and Damo, and I was saying to Damo that that City are just doing the same thing over and over again for 70 minutes. They're just trying to cross into the box and they're getting nowhere. And it was exactly what we were expecting. And they found it really difficult to break them down. Now, I know there's been a bit of football that's been played since then because that was further back in the season. But it will be interesting if we do get the first goal. It could be a very tough night for City. And considering what we've just seen, it took them a fair amount of time to break down Adelaide. It's not going to be any easier for them if the Woo get the first goal.
That's a very good point, actually, and I wouldn't disagree with you, Jesse. I think if the Woo score first, I think this could be a bit of a dour match to watch because I think if form has shown anything this season, so the Woo won twice 1-0, and then there was a 2-2 draw thrown in there as well. But it does look like if the Woo do score first, or the longer that it stays 0-0, the more likely the Woo are that they're going to be the ones that will take out this grand final. So I don't know. I think it has all the ingredients for it to be a bit of a dour game, but I guess we've got to hope that it's more a 2-2 draw than a 1-0 win to either team.
If the Woo win, are we calling Aloisi the A-League Conte?
Yeah,
Not a bad shout, yeah. That'll be the matchup, though, boys. It's Aloisi Kisnorbo, really. Like, we're talking about Aloisi's managerial style. You're talking about the immovable object, and then we were talking about Kisnorbo's substitutions in Tilio. How does he set them up to break that down? That's really what I'm going to be interested in seeing in this match, and whether it's going to sell out.
Boys, what's your prediction? Who's going to win? Go early.
Oh, I think it's going to go to penalties, and I think the Woo are going to win it. I think it's going to be 1-1. It's going to go to penalties, and Woo are going to win it through Jamie Young's goalkeeping in the penalty shootout.
Wow!
So one mini Azuzu Ute each.
They're going to split their Ute in half.
I'm going to say 2-1 in regular time to the Woo.
Ooh.
Boys, before we move on to the Prem, at Kazanaki asks, since everyone loves the baby Ute so much, should they put the mini Ute on the toilet seat for the trophy presentation?
I love Kazanaki's optimism. The same people on soccer Twitter who weirdly used their clout and ironically and performatively loved the mini Ute will even care about this come grand final time. Trends move pretty fast, all right? Especially on soccer Twitter. I don't mean to be a downer, but I'm just saying, don't go buying an Isuzu mini Ute for Christmas if you think you can just return it to the pet store. Mini Utes are for life.
Oh, that's very good. All right, let's get into the Premier League final day. So final day that was so full of twists and turns, you could be forgiven for feeling car sick. First of all, the big one, the title race. City were down 2-0 at home to Villa before mounting an incredible 5-minute burst where they scored three times to steal the title from Liverpool's grasps. Liverpool themselves has done it the hard way too, coming back after conceding early on to get a 3-1 win against Wolves. Colby, Jesse, you're both Liverpool fans. How much of a tease was the final day for you?
Yeah, it shouldn't have been a tease. I think the general consensus amongst most Liverpool fans would be that they didn't have high expectations for the final day. I mean, of course, you have that little bit of hope that Villa might be able to frustrate them for a while. I mean, my hope was that Villa was going to be able to keep them at bay for the first 20, 30 minutes, where City is usually the most lethal, and that would at least have a bit of a nervy 90 minutes at least. But wasn't expecting them to score that quickly. They did. Didn't expect them to get a second. They did. And then in that time, I mean, Liverpool had gone down so early and they had to come back from that, and they were really struggling for that second goal. And to be honest, and I said this to you guys earlier, the thing that was actually stressing me out as the day unfolded was the idea that Liverpool was going to be stranded on goal difference with City because they couldn't get that second goal and they were just going to draw with Wolves, and City was still going to win the league. That would have just been like the biggest kick in the balls because we'd have to win. We'd have to win the league, and if we hadn't been able to do that, it would have been more damaging, I think. But the fact that City just came back and scored 2 goals after that and just sort of ripped it away again, it was a bit to stomach, but it was just kind of like City should never have been in that situation in the first place. I mean, it was just madness.
City play their matches like me when I'm doing an assignment. Like I do nothing for like, the first couple of weeks, and then the night of I just like smash it down in the end, and just submit it late, and then there it is, and there it was with City too. But Jesse, talk us through it when Coutinho put that goal in the 70th minute or whatever it was to put Villa 2-0 up. It was just like the headlines, just like all of the hype from the British press had been saying. Like, what was your head like at that point?
Well, one thing that stuck with me a bit from City, and I know that Liverpool played them a few times this year, but one that stands out to me is Tommie, when all of us were in Brisbane watching the League Cup final, and you remember there was that burst in the second half where City almost took it to the to extra time, where they just scored a couple of quick goals and looked like they could have scored 3-4 goals in the space of 5 minutes. That was a real microcosm of what happened last night. Like, they have an ability to basically put 3 or 4 goals past a team in like 5 minutes. I don't know if it's just the fact that they're very good at piling on the pressure and that they put everyone forward, or it's also the fact that other teams just shit the bed under the pressure. I think it's a bit of both. But yesterday, that was just a complete capitulation from Villa in the space of a couple of minutes. And I guess what I'm saying is that it's not all down to just Villa playing poorly in that time. I think we've seen sort of warnings of that earlier in the season, and Liverpool had a bit of a scare early in the season with it as well. So I think they are a team who are unique in the sense that they can just blitz a team in the space of 5 minutes.
I, for one, am just stunned that a team managed by Steven Gerrard could let it slip like that. I just thought
absolute narrative from you, eh?
That's bait. That's bait.
I couldn't resist it. Sorry, guys. I know that it's a hard day for you, but I mean, to get that in there.
I mean, you guys get fucking beaten in the Europa League final and stuff like.
Semis.
Yeah, well, might as well have been a final the way I was hearing it. All gracious, and then we get bloody pipped on the final day, and here comes the bloody knife.
I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry.
Unbelievable.
But look, it was I guess another case of so far yet so close for Liverpool, and it's still, I guess, as close as you were and as great a season as you had. I guess it's still got to be pretty frustrating to be pipped again by this City team that's just so relentless and can just find results out of nowhere when they look like they're not going to get it on the day, and even later in a game like that as well.
It's like Klopp did the exact same thing, and after the game he said, I would have preferred if they were up like 4-0 in the first half. He knows the game's done. He knows it's over. It's just
the hope. It's the hope that kills you.
Say the line. Say the line.
Yeah. It really is. It really is. And it's like, but I think some key context here that needs to be reminded. some key context here that needs to be reminded as well is that, back in January when we were talking about this, there was one point where Liverpool was 14 points behind them. So you've got to look at that and think, well, they should never have. Again, City should never have put themselves in the situation in the first place. They should have had this one before the final day. So that's that for me is why I'm proud of our club in the sense that they took it to the final day. Not, as you said, Colby, not we couldn't do anything more on the final day than win. So the rest was in City's hands.
And City are a juggernaut at the moment, like I said at the top. But things change, coaches move on, eras fade, money moves. Like Liverpool had their time in the 80s, and United in the early, years of the Premier League, and people must have thought those two eras would just continue on forever. But, they changed and they ebbed and flowed, and players and managers and owners came and went. So, I mean, it's hard to see it at the moment. And given the pure, like a nation state that sits behind Manchester City and the City Football Group, it is a little bit harder to see. There is a bit more inertia behind them, but don't discount what a big factor Pep is in all of this as well, and he's not going to be managing there forever. So I think things will change.
I've got to say that sort of in the grand scheme of Pep's title wins in England since he's been at City, this is probably ranks maybe second or third for me in terms of the titles that he's won, because he still doesn't have a number 9 like Jesus started the season playing out on the right. They're going to have Ireland next year, so obviously they're just going to score 1 million goals. But De Bruyne is kind of like he's come good in the second half of the season, but he missed quite a bit of the middle of the season to COVID. And
you mean player of the season, Kevin De Bruyne?
Yeah, I know. I still don't understand how he got that, but anyway, we'll leave that there for now.
Robbed. Absolutely robbed.
But just I guess a really it's a strange time, I guess. And look, this is an amazing City team, and they've been extremely well coached, but still, I guess it's a strange moment. Moving on though, Spurs comprehensively swatted away Norwich 5-0, who looked every part the last place team who'd just been relegated a couple of weeks ago. Son was briefly the league's top scorer, ended up sharing the title with Salah. It means Spurs keep 4th spot, a massive achievement for Conte after their horrific start under Nuno Espirito Santo. We'll talk more about Arsenal and Spurs' respective seasons in the Premier League season review app in a couple of weeks' time. West Ham, they couldn't handle the twists and turns of the last day as they failed to capitalise on Man United's loss to Palace. West Ham haven't beaten Brighton in the Premier League era, continuing their run as West Ham's bogey team. And finally, though, onto the other big result of the weekend, which was the 2 games involving the 2 teams in the relegation battle. So Everton, their win over Palace midweek meant that they were safe with a game to spare, and it showed. They got spanked 4-1 by 5th place Arsenal. Meanwhile, Leeds' 2-1 win over Brentford meant that they were safe to fight another day in the Premier League. But Burnley, they couldn't beat away a Callum Wilson-inspired Newcastle. So it meant that Leeds stay up just basically literally on the final day. And it was right until the end of the game. I think it was only about 10 minutes to go when Leeds scored their winner there. But boys, despite having a slightly better position leading into the final day, Burnley couldn't find the result that they needed to stay above Leeds. Did Burnley deserve to go down?
I think you just said it all there, Tommie. But in the alternative, it's justice for Dyche, isn't it? They did him dirty.
It does. I remember, yes, their results have improved over the last couple of weeks, but there's a part of me that feels like just sort of in this weekend alone, Dyche isn't letting that team go down, are they? I don't know if you guys agree with that.
I don't know, mate. I've been a bit distracted. I don't know if we've been potting for so long that your headphones look a bit like a headband now. Anyway, that was distracting me. Anyway, looked like you'd just done like one of those workouts and you got one of the headbands at the back. But anyway, also you've robbed Arsenal of a goal there, mate. It was 5-1 to Arsenal.
Oh, was it?
So they got another one at the end there. So
well, in the end, it didn't matter anyway.
Justice for Arteta, I guess.
Justice for Sal in the comments.
Justice for Sal. I think the narrative I've been pushing in the couple of my recent appearances on here has been about some of these players that have been hanging on the edge of the Spurs Arsenal race and where they're going to go. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And now Conte has his pick of the market, making 4th, and I think everyone knew it was a big deal making 4th, but I think everyone was like, World Cup year, Spurs have a growing squad. Spurs have got a growing squad, but they've actually, as far as an experiment is concerned, they've shown that they can integrate players from other leagues like Serie A, and actually they work instantly.
Conte's going to get a rude surprise when he remembers that he's at Tottenham, not Chelsea.
Yeah, well,
thinking that he's going to have a transfer budget, thinking that he's going to be able to like go and sign who he wants next season. He's in for a rude shock.
Sell to buy. And he's also going to have Kane wanting to leave. And...
Colby, I bet he wakes up every morning wish he was, at the helm of an oligarch. But we can't have it all. No, but I think to be honest, what I like about what Conte's done though is that if you can get shrewd signings in like Kulusevski and the like, he's got Bentancur in there. My pick for a while has been that Dybala's off to Spurs, and that he's basically just been waiting to see if they're going to make top 4 to make the decision, and that's kind of what I'm hinting at. I think they're going to be players that Conte wants who have just been waiting to see if they make 4th. They wouldn't have had the information until yesterday or overnight, so now the real interesting stuff begins with Spurs in the transfer market, because I do think they will get a couple of players, and if they do, they're going to be a real pain in the ass next year, to put it bluntly.
You think they could sort of be challenging next year, or like challenging the top 3 or the top 2, or
pushing them all the way?
So the key for that 3rd or 4th spot is take points off the teams around you, but also try and spoil like they did just recently at Anfield. Try and actually go toe to toe with those teams and see if you can get a win or a draw over the course of the season. That'll set them up really well to be in the mixer at the end of the season. But it's not that for Spurs, is it? It's making sure that they win against all the other teams that are in the league consistently throughout the season. So, but if anyone can do it, Conte can. So, yeah, I'm a bit worried about them next year. So we'll see what they do in the transfer market.
I mean, I thought Chelsea would sort of push City and Liverpool all the way this year, and see how that sort of panned out. So it's still quite a sizable gap, I guess, between City, Liverpool, and the rest. So
guys,
we'll see if they can close that gap.
Well, we'll check the tapes. We'll check the tapes in the coming weeks. But very interestingly, if you look at the British pundits, they did this big list of predictions at the start of the season, like we do, and a lot of them had Chelsea to win the league, and it was either Chelsea or City, and there's basically nobody picked Liverpool to win the league.
Oh, they were right still.
But they had them 3rd or 4th. They didn't expect Liverpool to be in that position. And what has been so obvious throughout the season is that 2 teams have pulled away. So that sort of just speaks to what you're saying, Tommie. Chelsea just didn't quite stay in the race.
I guess no one was really expecting even the war in Ukraine and
I saw a guy
all that sort of thing, right? Like
I saw a guy on Twitter's like, we would have won it. It wasn't for the war in Ukraine. Fuck you, Putin.
Yeah, I don't know how the war in Ukraine made Lukaku play in jeans and made Werner and Havertz go missing for the first half of the season. But here we are.
You're saying there's a sanctions on jeans.
Oh dear.
Oh shit.
Well, boys, look, I wanted to throw out a stat regarding Leeds that at Kazanaki mentioned for us. He says that this season Leeds picked up 15 points from goals they scored after the 90th minute to avoid the drop, which that is incredible. That's probably going on half of their points, I think. And the other stat, which is probably not so positive, not so glowing about Leeds, was that they, against the top 6 opposition, they played 12, lost 12, scored 8 goals and conceded 47. So that maybe goes some way to explaining why they were where they were at the end of the season. So
minus 37 goal difference at the end there.
Wow, awful. But look, that pretty much wraps things up for this week. We'll be back next week to talk A-League Grand Final, and also we'll be talking Premier League season review as well. So looking forward to talking A-League and obviously a bit more as well. So until then, enjoy the football.